Support comes from BECU, a member-owned credit union putting people over profit, offering financial services and support to the community with access to local financial centers, over 30,000 ATMs, and online resources at becu.org. Federally insured by NCUA.
Hey, good morning. It's Paige Browning in for Patricia Murphy. It's Monday. This is Seattle Now. And this week, the show will sound a little different because we're wading into the elements, the water, air, earth, and fire that surround us and that this summer are changing the way we live. Even in our modern, tech-heavy city, we're still at the whim of what nature's got in store. It's changing our homes, our waterways, and even our food. This week, we'll meet the people who are rising to meet the challenges the elements bring, starting with wine. You probably noticed the weekend smoke and how detrimental it can be to our health, but it can also really hurt our wine. One of our guests learned that the hard way. We'll hear more about it on today's show, but first, let's get you caught up. All eyes are on Afghanistan as the Taliban takes control of Kabul for the first time in 2 decades, and Afghanistan's military collapses. Here at home, a Seattle-based education nonprofit is halting construction of a new boarding school in Afghanistan. The organization Sahar says due to the recent increase in security concerns, they've decided to pause their program operations for about a month. It includes pausing a school they were having built with help from UW's College of Built Environments. A racial justice group is now calling for a boycott of Seattle Children's Hospital. This after an assessment report found that security is more frequently used against patients of color and that employees felt patients received differing care based on their race. King County Equity Now has launched a campaign telling the hospital's donors to divest and asking the CEO to step down. A statement last week from Seattle Children's says they take responsibility for failing to address racial disparities with greater urgency and have much work to do. And can you feel that shift in the air? A chance of rain is in the forecast. Sweet, sweet summer rain. And for the most part, that low-level wildfire smoke has swept out of the Seattle area for at least the next few days. The chance of rain today and tomorrow is mostly north of King County, up to the Canadian border, and along the coast and in the mountains. North Seattle might see some droplets, and at this point, I might go chase that down. Now, on to the show.
To see the difference.
That would be great.
Yeah. This is it's a little tamer, I feel like, now than it was when it was in barrel. It's kind of like when you like put out a fire, like your campfire, and you're just dumping water on it, and like that wet charcoal. That's what's really going on with it for me.
It's so interesting because to me this tastes like a good wine, but now that I know that it's smoke-tainted, it does taste like it's been like, you know, maybe roasting on the coals for a few minutes. That's not how a 2019 Syrah should taste. But it's a problem as the Northwest sees fires and smoke erupt each summer. You can picture it. We did last week, actually. Haze-filled skies, the smell of bonfire, maybe a nagging headache because smoke has filled the air. And that headache has a double meaning for winemakers like Dane Usig, creator of Entiat wine.
I started my brand in 2018, and I wasn't aware that smoke was really even present in the vineyard. I kind of contracted those grapes later, and I wasn't aware that there was a massive fire up the Entiat River, and all that smoke kind of came down and settled into where this vineyard is.
And this was your first batch that you...
My very first batch of wine, so on my own. So it took about a year for it to really develop and just explode with all the smokiness in the wine. So I wasn't even aware that it was happening. It kind of crept up and kind of developed those characteristics of charcoal and creosote and wood smoke later on, and became just so apparent that when I opened up the bung out of the barrel, I could smell it without even sticking my nose in there. So yeah, it was very intense, and just kind of rocked my world, because this was my baby, and now it's now it's something that I didn't want it to be. So yeah, I just kind of took it as a loss, and which is tough, because I've already invested so much money into starting this brand and everything, and then to have my very first wine just be super smoky, it was tough to comprehend.
So smoke taint, or what is sometimes known as smoke affected wines, refers to the aromas and flavors that are associated with wines that are made from grapes that have been affected by smoke from wildfires. The fruit can take up some of these compounds from the smoke, and then when we make wine from that fruit, these compounds that are related to the smoke can be extracted into the wine. You can end up with wines in more severely affected cases that might smell like cigarette smoke or cigar butt, ashtray, things like that. My name is Tom Collins. I'm a professor at Washington State University. I run a research program generally on grape, wine, and distilled spirits, aroma, and flavor chemistry. One of our big research areas right now is looking at the impact of smoke exposures in vineyards on grape and wine quality.
It took a full year for Dane to know that he had smoke taint in his first vintage. The grapes were picked, juice pressed, wine fermented in barrels, and Dane pops open a bottle to test it with friends, and ash. It tastes like ash. This is one of the biggest issues with smoke taint. You can't pick up a grape and taste it. A lot of makers put in time and money making the wine before they can know if the wildfire smoke will make it undrinkable.
Yeah, it's not like you can look at a human being and be like, I bet you're a smoker. You never really know. It's the same thing with these little grape babies, is you just don't know. My name is Brooke Delmas Robertson. I am the director of Winegrowing for Delmas and SJR Vineyard in the Rocks District of Milton Freewater, Oregon. When those events happen, you can't taste the fruit even and know. You have to go through fermentation for those compounds to come out. So if you're a winery and you're buying fruit from somebody, you have no idea if that fruit has been compromised or not. Let alone on the grower side, I can't tell you as the winery, hey, I think that your fruit's going to be affected. Watch out for that. We don't know. I mean, the underlying message of this whole thing is nobody has any idea what it's going to do until it happens.
Yeah, so you really can't, and part of it has to do with just the amount of sugar and acid that's present in the grape itself, and those affect our ability to really detect these compounds when they're present in the fruit itself. So we have to either do some sort of an extraction to see what's present in the skins before we harvest the fruit or before we make wine from it, or we look at what's present in the juice or in the wines after the process is completed.
2017, late August, it sat in here for quite some time. That, if memory serves, was from a bunch of fires in the gorge. That was the first time up here that it had really been a thing. But, in my growing up in California, were there fires? Absolutely. We lived in Bend for a very long time. Were there fires every summer? Absolutely. I think the difference is the level of intensity that's happening in it now. It's so intense, these fires, and they're burning more and they're burning for longer. And so, small events in terms of wine grape growing are not going to affect you as heavily as having smoke sitting low in the atmosphere in your region for multiple days, months on end. So basically every year since 2017, there's been a handful of days every season where we've had some concerning smoke sort of settle in. So far, we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 consecutive days of hazy smokiness that stopped on Wednesday, August 4th, but started on Tuesday, the 27th, Monday, the 26th of July. So those days, it has really been socked in here. For SJR Vineyard, we've been extremely fortunate that we have not had any effect of this in our wines. We tend to pick earlier, so early September is typically our picking window when our fruit hits the phenolic ripeness, the flavor profile that we're looking for. So we're also growing varieties that tend to ripen earlier. That's not to say, though, that it won't happen in future if we keep having these crazy events that just can decimate, people's livelihoods. It's really concerning, both winery and grower. Everybody's in the same boat here. You can't have one side without the other. So it's we're all a little concerned would be an understatement for sure.
Brooks heard the forecasts. Wildfires are on track to keep raging throughout the Northwest, and some years will be worse than others with climate change. But smoke taint, that doesn't sell. So what can you do to prevent it?
Well, there are some things we're working on that are available to the industry. At the moment, there aren't necessarily a lot of great solutions.
There's methods now that you can utilize to filter out these intense aromas and flavors of smoke. There's filters that can eliminate the bound compounds. So that was an option for me, but since I only made 4 barrels and utilizing that equipment and those filters was going to cost me more than what I actually invested in the grapes themselves. So I just kind of took it as a loss.
Anything in agriculture, you're sort of at the whim of Mother Nature. You don't really get a choice in what that season's going to do for you. As growers, we kind of joke, what's a normal year even mean anymore? In the early aughts and 2010 sort of range, things were more normal. We would have, when we first got up here, we were also told that this killing freeze event that rolls in through eastern Washington and Oregon was something that would happen maybe every 10 years. I can tell you that at SJR Vineyard, we've had to cut our vineyard to the ground due to killing freeze in winter 3 times in 1 decade. So on both sides of this equation, we're hitting these extremes, whether it's heat and smoke or the extreme cold freeze events of the wintertime. Control things where you can, and at the same time, understand you don't have any control over anything at the end of the day. Because if your air is affected, grape berries, those little guys, they breathe just like we breathe. So if they're sucking in smoke just like you are, there's not much on the grower side in the vineyard that we can do to improve the air.
All of this, it's not a problem other farmers or growers have. Apples, for example, they can sit in smoke for 1 or 2 weeks, but you don't end up with ashy apple juice or smoke-flavored onions or tainted hops and beer. Wine grapes get hit with this because of scientific reasons, as you've heard. The grapes breathe. They have skin that takes in particles just like ours. And I keep wondering whether this is a cultural issue about wine culture. For some, They might call it snobby. I'll call it precise. But when you taste wine with a sommelier or even an enthusiast, you are tasting for notes, for the terroir of where the grapes are grown, hints of dirt or burnt popcorn or raspberries. It's not just grapes fermented in a barrel, right? It's a representation of a region and all of the flavors that you might taste there. But with the forests ready to burn and fires taking off every year, the chance of smoke taint is now part of the region. Is Washington wine worth the effort?
Absolutely, Washington wine is worth it. We make some really terrific wines, even in years where smoke exposures are taking place. There are still lots of great wines that are made, and it's absolutely worth the effort. It's important that we do this work to help our growers and winemakers understand what their options might be and to try and find ways to work through these situations. So it's absolutely worth it.
No, this is my dream, and I'm living it out, and this is all I'm going to be doing the rest of my life. So yeah, and it's going to be in areas where smoke is always going to be a factor. So this is my life. Yeah. Absolutely.
And you're a vineyard like SJR Vineyard, where our goal is a legacy. It's not as simple as, oh, we're going to sell the business when, we've made enough money, or we're going to sell the business to make more money. Our business model is predicated on keeping this thing in the family for as long as humanly possible, multi-generational. And wine grapes want that, need that. That's the European model, right? There's wineries there that have been in existence since the 1300s with the Antinori's, right? We are babies here in the grand scheme of this whole wine industry game, right? So as good stewards of that piece of ground, that's our ultimate goal. There's a cultural aspect to wine growing, wine making, that just touches our souls as humans, and we want to be able to keep that going as long as humanly possible.
Thanks for listening to Seattle Now. Are you following us on Instagram yet? Follow us at Seattle Now Pod. Sarah Leibovitz produced today's show. Our production team this week is Alec Cowan, Jenny Cecilmore, Brandy Fullwood, Kristen Long, and Diana Opong. Matt Jorgensen does our theme music. I'm Paige Browning. See you tomorrow.
Hey, Bill Radke here to remind you that KUOW has been bringing you the news since 1952 and even helped found the National Public Radio Network in the 70s. August 20th is National Radio Day, so we're taking a moment to celebrate the legacy of public radio and the community of supporters who make it all possible. Help us celebrate by sharing why you love public radio, or become a new member at just $5 per month to sustain this service for the next generation of listeners. Visit KUOW.org/radio.